Hello, and welcome to Future Construct. I'm Mark Oden, the CEO of BIM Designs Incorporated. We're here at Geo Week 2023 in Denver, Colorado, and I'm joined today by Danielle O'Connell, the Senior Emerging Director at Skanska, Emerging Technologies at Skanska.
Yes.
Fantastic. So, thank you so much for being on our podcast very early, working very closely with Amy Peck on that. We're so honored to have you as an early guest. Would love for you to recap with our viewers a little bit of your history and how you landed at Skanska.
Yeah, so I've been in the construction industry for about 15 years now. I started as an architecture grad, not really knowing where I wanted to go and where I fit in. Ended up with Consigli Construction right out of college, spent 6 years there exploring different aspects of the business and trying to understand what construction was all about. I moved on then to Gilbane, worked there in project management, so I spent a lot of my time at Consigli, started my career in project coordination, I guess it was, and then it was around BIM and VDC were really my focus. I moved more to a project management role, then I moved into an owner role where I worked at Massport and spent time really understanding the challenges of that organization and how implementing BIM and standards would help us achieve some of the bigger goals for the organization. And then I met the team actually that I work for now at Skanska during that position. And I was always just kind of a Skanska groupie in a way. I was kind of wanted to and inspired to work there. And so I took a short time off from the industry. I worked in software at Bluebeam. It was a tool that I always just loved and was really familiar with and felt like I could sell it to anybody, right? So I went there for about a year before I moved over to Skanska, where I've now been for over 5 years.
Very cool, and I love the concept of being a Skanska groupie. So tell us a little bit about Skanska. It's a multinational organization.
Yeah, we are a multinational global organization. Our headquarters are in Stockholm, Sweden, and we are. I sit in our Boston office, which is one of several throughout the U.S. I sit specifically with our building unit, but we have 3 business units in the U.S. We have building, civil infrastructure, and commercial development.
Very cool. And what are some recent notable Skanska projects, and maybe some that you may have been a part of?
I'll share Moynihan Train Hall in New York City. I got to walk through there. I had visited during construction, and then I got to walk through, and just seeing that space was unbelievable.
Very cool. Yeah. And where's your involvement in Skanska? Your focus on emerging technologies, and how do you what does that focus look like, and how do you bring that focus into Skanska?
Yeah. So my team is pretty small. We're about 7 people nationwide, and we roll up under our strategy organization, under our Chief Strategy Officer, Anita Nelson. And so we've actually been really well aligned over the last couple of years with our business development, our marketing team, and just our strategy around what should we focus on as a business. Our business plan falls under that strategy as well. And so we work across the nation, as I was saying. The majority of us do sit in Boston, but we travel to our project teams, to our offices in different parts of the country to better understand what the challenges that the organization or a specific project team or client is having, and try to align solutions, people, process to help overcome those challenges. So it's a really exciting time. We are encouraging innovation. We are encouraging people to try things. It's okay if it's not successful. And we think about how do we overcome that, pilot maybe not being successful, learn from it, and move on to the next one.
Very cool, and you were on the keynote panel this year at Geo Week. Very impressive job, and you provided lots of great contributions. A couple of the items that I'd love to dive into. The keynote seemed to focus quite a bit on not just seeing technology as technology, but really trying to understand what the core needs are of a client or an individual or a customer, and how to apply certain processes to make the right decisions to see if this technology is appropriate to bring into this project or this company. So one of the ideas that you talked about was change management.
Yeah.
Once the decision is made to adopt a technology, there's a whole process of change management. So can you guide us through a little bit of how you personally see change management and how you've implemented that at Skanska and seen the successes of that?
Yeah, I would say change management is actually something that I think gets overlooked. And one thing that came up on the panel discussion was that we often think of implementing, piloting, adopting a new technology as a technology project, but really it is that bigger change management. We are looking to implement a tool to make a change to the way that we've been working for however many years, right? So we have a tendency in construction to not really want to adopt anything unless you can figure out a way to align it with, hey, we're building buildings, right? We're doing things the same way, we're just finding a better way to do that. Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of it, right? Is understanding what is really getting to the baseline and the root cause. What is that challenge? What is that problem? Is it something that happens consistently on several projects? So we have a lot of groups, committees, councils in place within our organization that analyze what are the challenges and how are they consistent across the country? Are they happening, more specifically regionally or in a certain office? But we reevaluate those probably about every year and a half. And so every solution we look at, we're trying to make sure that we are understanding, how are we going to get there? How are we going to help solve that problem? And so, the change management process, to come back to it, is just thinking through, again, not necessarily reinventing the wheel. We are still building buildings, but maybe we use a simple example like automation. How do we leverage Power Automate, for example, to enable the clicks to happen between different systems? So I think about our accounting system and our project management system so that it saves somebody time and ultimately reduces burden on our project team. So thinking about things like that is really what we're focused on.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing the insights into change management at Skanska, Danielle. I'd love to hear another topic that was brought up at the keynote. In fact, it's something you specifically contributed, was this concept of mobile app fatigue or generally app fatigue. Would really like to drill into that and understand what are you seeing when it comes to app fatigue and what are you driving for? Yeah,
so I guess the example that I use is probably relevant to a lot of people, but every time I fly on a different airline, I was saying I have to download another app. And it was something that I had experienced the night before. And I'm like, oh, now I got to remember to delete this when I'm done, or I'm not going to fly on that airline for another year, or whatever it is. So I think about that when I think about all of these great solutions on the market, and our teams coming to us, weekly saying, hey, I want to try this thing, or I have this problem to solve. One of the big things that we often have to just step back and ask ourselves is, when we're talking to a vendor, does it integrate with an existing tool? Because I fear that if we try, 4 different new applications, technologies, process improvements on a project, that we're going to get people, instead of reducing burden like we really want to do and create that operational efficiency, we're actually going to cause them to be overwhelmed by, oh, now I have to do my job, but you want me to do it this way and this way and this way and this way. And so we really have to be thinking about that. So we're often asking, what is the tool, does it integrate with our project management system, for example? So now it's one less place that everyone has to go to experience the benefit of that application.
That's a really impressive observation, and I really feel like you're setting the stage for the future in that one. And I heard during the keynote that it's a metric or a condition that you use in making a decision. Yeah. Is it either existing or is it on the roadmap?
Yes.
How important is that to you?
It's very important. I think integration and interoperability are going to really drive us to be successful. So again, we're all just trying to reduce burden on our people and our teams, on our clients, our projects. So we have to ask that every time. And I think the first question that I ask almost every vendor we work with, do you integrate with Procore? Mm-hmm. Right? Like that, it seems like a really easy, straightforward question off the bat. And if they say, we don't today, but if you're interested in, we also get like, if you're interested in that, like that's something that we could talk about. We could add it to our roadmap. That would be an answer that would be suitable.
Sure, sure, suitable.
Yeah.
So, very interesting similarity. And speaking of Procore, someone just demoed to me the model inside of Procore.
Yeah.
So even anybody in the field or anybody along the entire project can open up the BIM model and fly through that.
Yeah.
And I was very impressed to see that integration in there. That was really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So speaking of other things, Geo Week-related, what else have you taken away? What else are you excited about seeing? Kara's presentation is coming up.
Yeah, I can't wait to see her presentation. I was overwhelmed by, I think, the way that digital twin was covered yesterday, for example. It was broken out into more bite-sized chunks. I think even for our team internally, and conveying what digital twin is or what it means to some of our leadership team has been challenging, but I saw different ways that it was being explained or used that I think would be more relevant. So I'm actually really excited to take that back to my team after the conference is over. I also was inspired by hearing the GIS Esri presentation this morning at the keynote and thinking just bigger picture. Like, we are so focused on vertical construction oftentimes, but how does that fit into some of the graphics around leveraging GIS to look at sustainability and planning for floods in the future and weather. Like, it's things that I don't think we think about when we're just talking about a 24-month building vertical construction project, but I think it could have so much impact and could really help us to reach some of our global sustainability goals.
It's incredible seeing the simulations that Esri is creating, and just stunning. Would love to, as we wrap up, just to understand any advice that you have for early in career individuals that really are eyeing Skanska and not only getting into Skanska, but being successful at Skanska.
Yeah, Skanska's a great organization. It's big, but there are so many opportunities there. So I encourage, anyone that's interested, come to Skanska. It's a great place to work. We have a Skanska Women's Network that I'm strongly passionate about. So if you are a woman in construction, please come our way. If you're passionate about technology, about innovation, it could be estimating, marketing. There are just so many opportunities. And I would say as a company, we are really good about aligning people with their strengths and maybe their goals. And so it's flexible. You see a lot of people move around and climb a ladder that way.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that advice, and thank you for your participation. I really appreciate your support. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
It was a pleasure.
Hello and welcome to Future Construct. I'm Mark Oden, the CEO of BIM Designs Incorporated, and I'm here at Geo Week 2023 in Denver, Colorado. Today I have the honor of interviewing Johnny Fortune, the National BIM Director at NIBS. Thank you so much for joining us, Johnny.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You were just on the podcast, just released a few weeks ago. So honored to have you again with us. Would love to, just a refresher and a reminder, if you could tell our audience what you do at NIBS.
So I'm the director for the U.S. National BIM Program, which is a relatively new program. The BIM Council, which has been a part of NIBS, has been around for quite a few years, but industry leaders realized there was a need to accelerate digital transformation. We weren't really moving the needle fast enough in the industry, and so they created my role to lead this national program, which encompasses 6 different work streams with different focus areas like owner leadership, standards and guidance, stakeholder engagement, legal and insurance training, and education.
That's so impressive. Last time you were with us, you were with Amy, our wonderful and lovely podcast host, and you talked to her a lot about standards and the importance of standards. Maybe you could help summarize why it's so important that we have a BIM standard nationwide.
Yeah, it is important because it enables project teams to work together. It enables those project teams to give the owner what they expect, and so that it provides a baseline of expectation of what information is going to be delivered, what format it's going to be delivered in, and ensures that format is usable downstream.
Beautiful. And you're working with owners and general contractors and contractors nationwide, is that right?
Oh, that's correct. Basically, with the National Institute of Building Sciences, we don't have one stakeholder interest. We're unbiased, and we welcome all stakeholders throughout the supply chain. So it includes designers. It also includes software vendors and other solutions providers.
So you seek feedback all throughout the year, and then you turn that, you coagulate that and turn that into an agreed standard?
Yeah, so we bring together subject matter experts and leaders in the industry, try to make sure that every stakeholder group's voice is heard, and then develop consensus-based standards like the National CAD Standard and the National BIM Standard.
Yeah, so what are the new developments with those two standards?
So the National CAD Standard is a very mature product. It has been around for quite some time, but there were some editorial changes that were needed, and so that has been in the works the last several months. That's anticipated to come out later this year. Much effort has been gone through to clean up the language, move some of the historical content, aggregate that into a section so people can read it if they're interested in the history, but if they want to get directly to the standard, it's more streamlined. And we've also taken and separated and highlighted content rather that is normative or required content versus what might be just recommended or suggested. So the National CAD Standard should be coming out later this year.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then there's the National BIM Standard as well.
So the National BIM Standard is definitely a heavy lift. We've got a lot of people in different work groups involved in producing the National BIM Standard. And again, to your point earlier, it brings together owner perspective as well as designer, as well as contractor and software provider. And that has been in the works, and we anticipate it'll be out in the summer of this year. It is it's an update that's been several years in the making, so we're really excited about it. But it also has several modules, and these modules have important components so that the project team, including the owner, can make good decisions about how BIM would be executed on a project. So one of those work streams is what we've termed as minimum BIM, but it is defining if you're doing BIM on a project, it must contain these basic components for it to be considered BIM. And then we also have underlying definitions. So there's BIM is this for many people is a very nebulous idea. There's a lot of different use cases for BIM, and so we have a complete section on BIM uses, which help define what those are, whether it's reality capture or capturing existing conditions, authoring the design, coordinating the design, or delivering a record model.
That's impressive. So would there any consumer, would any designer or general contractor or owner be a consumer of this standard, or who would be the typical users?
Well, we anticipate people throughout the supply chain would be a user of the standard. Owners certainly could be able to use the BIM execution planning component. That's been around for a few versions of the National BIM Standard, but it's been revamped. So in this next edition, it is about making it more like a form that can be filled out, streamline that. Nice. And so it helps on the planning side, on the very front end, to determine exactly how BIM is going to be used on any given project. So we see owners being able to use that, and that becomes an incredible communication tool for the rest of the project. So whether it's designers or whether it's contractors, everyone has this execution planning document that's been revamped to help everyone on the project know what the expectations are.
Yeah, that's going to be great for communication and alignment. That's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Are there going to be any training programs related to this, or how's the rollout going to be?
So we do anticipate that there will be some follow-up training and education pieces. Right now we're working on content to make sure that content is wrapped up. And as you might imagine, it is a heavy lift with a National BIM Standard, right? And there's a lot of content that was in version 1, 2, and 3, and this being version 4. And in version 4, one feature is that we're adding new content that had not been created. So there is the building of that content, but there's also the reconciliation of the content that was in existing versions. So right now the plan is to have this content developed, have it published about mid-summer of this year, and then we'll begin to launch education training programs. And we envision those to be in the form of webinars or virtual events that people can join in and learn more about it.
Beautiful. And do you see any particular sectors or segments that will hook into it? For example, is the federal government going to say, hey, we're adopting this right away, or how's that going to roll out? Well,
in NIBS, at the Institute, we do have a lot of great relationships with federal agencies, and and many of them are on our planning committee. We have representations from representatives from GSA as well as Army Corps of Engineers. The VA has been involved, so we do anticipate that this is where we're trying to build this so that they can use it.
Right.
It's not just a public tool, it's not just a private tool, it is one that bridges the gap.
Yeah, that's lovely. I appreciate that so much. Everything you're doing to build that standard and to build a community around that standard as well. You spoke about the council a little bit. I'm sure there's many people who have helped participate in the creation of this BIM standard. Anybody top of mind that you'd love to acknowledge or recognize?
Yeah, I would really love to call out John Messner, Dr. John Messner from Penn State University, who is really the chair of our planning committee. He has worked tirelessly. He's been involved in the BIM Council as long as I have, and before I became an employee, I was a volunteer for 10 years.
Wow.
And so John has been right there all along the way. When I chaired the BIM Council, John was my vice chair. He later chaired it. And he's really taken the reins of the National BIM Standard and really led it forward through these last few years of development. And I'd also like to mention Dr. Carrie Dosick from the University of Washington, who has been a co-leader of the effort. So if you can imagine, there's a lot of work that goes on into pulling different work groups together, because it's not just one group, it's not one committee, it's actually made up of several work groups. And so it's really their leadership in coalescing the efforts of all these volunteers and these different work groups, bringing them together, keeping them on target, that's making it a success.
That's wonderful. And to the whole team, I'm sure they've worked very hard to make this possible. And I'm personally very excited to see how the National BIM Standard will impact BIM Designs and all of the clients that we can help promote through that effort.
Yeah, one thing we're excited about it too is that the approach is a little bit different. We're trying to move it to more an agile approach.
I love that.
And so the BIM standard, with this version, is now more modular, which means we'll be able to update some of those different modules independently without publishing an entire new standard.
Awesome. Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
So switching gears to Geo Week, you were on the keynote panel.
Yeah.
So the topic I found really interesting. It was they had owners, they had general contractors. They had you from the standards committee, and I felt like a huge portion of the conversation was about what technology and how to make the right decisions of adopting technology, and not just saying, hey, we're going to adopt this technology, right? How do we talk about change management related to that? Yeah. What were your key takeaways from the panel?
Well, I'm a longtime student of performance improvement and process reengineering, and as a general rule, you don't let the tool make the decision for you. And I think a lot of times in this industry we do get a little bit backwards. We see a tool, we're thinking, man, this is great technology. I want to purchase this tool, whatever it is, and I want to implement it, and then they try to attach the value proposition to it later, or the business case to it later. And so I think a key resounding theme through our discussions was, have a process, be a systems thinker, think critically about it, make sure you understand what your need is first, and then seek out a tool to meet that need, or develop a tool to meet that need.
Beautiful, yeah, and I love how that's effectively the Geo Week conference is let's learn from all of our best practices and let's share that community-wide. What other exciting concepts are you interested in learning from Geo Week or meeting? Who are you interested in meeting at Geo Week?
Yeah, so this has been fantastic. I believe this is my first Geo Week, so I was really impressed on the exhibit floor. The technology, the equipment, I was just really blown away with how far and how fast many of these tools and technology has advanced, which speaks to my earlier point about how easy it is to get caught up in, like, wow, that is amazing, and go after a tool before you really understand the need. But it's been fantastic networking with folks on the exhibit floor, and then hearing some of the sessions as well. One thing I'm particularly interested in is how we are going to make this transition from digital twin to smart cities. Like, how are we going to make that progress? And so I'm interested to find from the GIS community, what their pain points and their challenges are with digital twin, and how do we take it to the next step, and how do we then coalesce this huge amount of data together to support a smart city. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Very excited. As you can tell, I kind of geek out on this stuff.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
It's an exciting time and a great opportunity.
Wonderful, yeah, and at the panel I moderated yesterday, it was a huge example of the practical use cases of the digital twin, and I feel like in years prior it was everybody was speaking about the theory and what is possible, but now we have practical use cases, and so I do hope that in the years to come that'll be a translation from the digital twin to the smart city. But very exciting, yeah. The exhibit floor is really cool. It's got a bunch of drones, modern drones. It's got the LiDAR scanners. I mean, it's very impressive technology that's up there, and that's why I love that they brought it home at the keynote to say, hey, let's make sure we're making the best decision for our clients based on needs. Johnny, thank you so much for your participation. Thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed getting to know you, and look forward to continuing to.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Johnny.